So, welcome to another exciting episode of the Ultimate Global Podcast. And in this episode, we are being joined by the co-founder of PicUp, Jacob Olsen, to discuss on this topic of marketing for early stage startups. This episode is again in continuation with our special series of episodes that we are organizing with CEOs, founders, and co-founders. And since Jacob is a co-founder of PicUp, which he's going to tell in a while what PicUp is and how he came up with this idea. But welcome to this episode, Jacob. Really appreciate you always supporting Ultimate Global Podcast, um, and other kind of things that I keep on doing in a very open and transparent manner. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thanks for having me, Saurabh. I'm excited to chat with you. And yeah, it's good to see you very active across LinkedIn and what you're doing here on the UGP podcast. It's awesome stuff.
Thank you so much, Jacob. So, to start off with this discussion, first of all, I would like to know more about Pickup and how you came up with this idea, just for the listeners who might not be knowing about that.
Yeah, so PicUp is a on-demand mobile and web app that connects customers who need deliveries, small moves, and junk removal services, and connects them with drivers who have the vehicles that can complete those services, which is predominantly utes and vans. So I suppose the easiest way to describe it is the Uberization of utes and vans. And instead of moving people, we move big and bulky items that customers can't fit in their cars. So probably the three biggest use cases that we have for the pickup service is firstly junk removal, which is basically how the idea was born originally. One of our other co-founders, Levi, came up with the idea that because he lives on the Gold Coast here in Queensland, and there's a lot of tradies up that way, and he works in the construction industry, so he was seeing a bunch of empty utes parked on the side of the road for long periods of the day, and he's like, surely there's a way we can tap into these vehicles and make them more productive. And the first idea was junk removal. If someone needs an old couch or an old fridge or some green waste taken away, one of these tradies, when they finish their day, can go and pick up that item from someone's house or a business and make a little bit of extra income for the week. So that's kind of how the idea was born. And then throughout the preceding 6, 12, 18 months, we sort of transitioned into the pickup and delivery side, which now represents about 75% of our revenue. So that was probably a good idea that we brought that service on. And the two main use cases on that side of the business for the pickup and delivery is to pick up from retail stores and delivering to people's homes. So you could think when someone buys a piece of furniture from a furniture store, typically the lead time is 2 days to a week and even up to 4 weeks, depending on where the product's coming from. But with our service, because we're on demand, the customer can either jump on the web, make a booking, or they can jump on our mobile app and make a booking, or they can call us and make a booking, and we can get there within a few hours and deliver the product for them. So it really sort of increases the speed to get that product home. And then on the other use case is for small moves between residences. So let's just say you're a young person just out of home, you're 18, 19 years old. You might not have much stuff. So you might have a bed, a coffee table, and a fridge, maybe a bedside table. You don't have much stuff, so you probably don't need a traditional removalist, right? You probably don't want to be spending $500 to $1,000 to move a few items. And if you don't have friends or family that have the right type of vehicle to move that stuff, then PicUp is the solution for that. So they can, again, quickly make a booking online on the mobile app through the phone if they're old school and they like to talk to someone. And they can get that stuff moved at a considerably lower price than what they would with a traditional removalist, and they can pick and choose the time that it gets moved.
Yep, that's a very exciting idea, Jacob. As you said, Uberization of the things that you are doing, and the way you described it, it's very easy, very simple, but still solves a very critical problem that we have. So, I think kudos to your team and yourself for continuously driving this idea, because I know that a lot of startups, they start with their idea, and after a while they don't want to continue with that idea because of certain reasons, and that is something which we'll be discussing in this episode as well. But coming back to this topic that we have for today, that is marketing for early stage startups. How do you think that is very different from the larger companies, or do you think that there is some sort of synergies between how you market for your startup and how you market for a bigger multinational company?
Yeah, well, there's a few major differences, I think. Firstly, as an early stage startup, which we still are, you obviously have limited resources. So both on the finance side and also time, you most likely have a very small team, which we do. So if you compare that to, say, a well capitalized Series B, Series C, or even a public company, they have entire marketing departments with a separate person handling each little individual aspect of their marketing strategy. They might have someone who just does digital ads like Facebook and Google, and then they'll have someone who just handles email marketing. They might have a social media manager. They've got a CMO obviously as well, or a head of marketing, and they might have a content team. So they've got this big array of resources to draw on, and then you compare it to someone like us. We're only a couple of people, so we've got to try and handle all those little activities, and that's probably the biggest difference, is that you're stretched in terms of your resources. So you really got to focus on only a few things that are going to get the best bang for buck, and that's probably one thing that we found out probably the hard way, is that we tried to do too many things with limited resources. And as you would know, rather than focusing on one thing, if you try to do too many things, you end up doing nothing. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that we found, is that you're stretched with your resources. So you got to make the time and money that you do have count.
Yeah, I can totally relate with that because I've worked for a startup, and how it feels like when there is one person, and that is the person who's taking care of multiple things at the same time. But the advantage to that is, what I found is that you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot of different things in one role, which you might not be able to do that in a larger company. And I think that's a very core value that startups portray whenever they are looking for new people to hire, also because they can portray themselves as an organization or as a small company which is hiring to so that you can wear multiple hats in there, and that's how you can learn those different things which will help you later on in the career, isn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming into, trying to build a startup, not coming from a marketing background. I mean, I did a couple of marketing subjects in my MBA, but that what I learned in university compared to what you actually have to do to build a company is just, they're on two different ends of the spectrum. So for anyone who wants to learn about business, about marketing, about startups, the best way to do that is just go either start one yourself. I mean, you can start a business these days with all the tools that we have available with a very small amount of capital. I mean, it depends on what type of service or product that you're offering, but either start one yourself or go get a job at an early stage startup, because you will get exposure to so many different facets of the business that you wouldn't if you went and worked at a large multinational company.
Another thing that I really want to discuss with you is related to this fact of optimizing your marketing budgets and setting up the marketing strategies. So, first of all, when you are setting up strategies for your startup, how do you look at it at a broader level? Because I know that you don't have a lot of people as a startup. So, how do you set strategies and making sure that they are implemented and executed in the right manner?
Well, I would say probably early on, we probably didn't have a strategy, and yeah, like I said earlier, we learnt the hard way about marketing and probably what we should have been doing. If you want, I can take you through sort of step by step our journey over the last 12 months or 18 months in terms of marketing. Probably when we first started, going back to the very early days, we were just marketing to family and friends and peers. So just asking them and telling them about the product, seeing if they want to use it. That was probably the way that we got some early traction, which everyone should do. I mean, that's the easiest way to get people to use your product and test it early on. And then our next step, which looking back was completely the wrong move, but again, this is a part of starting a business. You live and learn. What we did, we brought on a BDR who was selling our product or our service directly to retail and commercial customers. Now, the issues with that was that PicUp, we didn't really have any visibility in the market. So for this person who was going out and doing cold calling to potential customers, there was no marketing qualified leads. There was no sales qualified leads. There was nothing. Probably our product wasn't really even good enough to be selling to big retail just yet. And it was just a spray and pray approach, which looking back was totally the wrong move. We didn't really have any content out there. So let's just say, for example, the BDR went and spoke to a potential retail client. They had a discussion. He told them about what we did. Then when they went back to do a little bit of research on us, which as you would as a customer, you want to know, okay, are these guys legit? We had a website, but apart from that, there wasn't much content out there. So it was probably, it was a good learning curve for us. We will bring BDRs on in the future, but we're probably going to have a totally different approach to that. And then from there, and this is still why the BDR was working, we brought on a marketing freelancer who purely ran some Google and Facebook ads for us. But again, it was based on very little content, and all we were really doing was capturing demand. So we weren't really generating any demand at that point. And the niches that we play in, for the in demand capture spaces like removalist, junk removal, retail delivery, these have like a lot of competition. They're extremely competitive in terms of SEO and AdWords and all that sort of stuff. So we're putting out not a bunch of money, but we're putting out a fair whack of money for an early stage startup for Google and Facebook ads. And we did get customers. Like, it does work, but in terms of the customer acquisition costs, it wasn't a sustainable option for us. And we felt that we weren't getting enough from that marketing freelancer, and it was nothing against them. But again, we probably didn't have the infrastructure for it to work as well as it could have. And then we went to the next step, which was bringing on a marketing agency. So at this point, we were like, okay, let's bring on a more comprehensive solution for us, because we didn't have anyone internally that was a marketing expert. And what generally happens with a marketing agency, you'll pay a monthly retainer, and that can range from anywhere from 5,000 up to, there's big businesses that would probably pay 50,000 a month. We weren't anywhere near that, but there was a monthly retainer, and then obviously with your ad spend and content creation spend as well. But the issues that I found, and after speaking to a lot of marketing people who high up in the space, these marketing agencies typically have anywhere from 20 to 100 clients. So the people working on your account are spread very thin. They might only spend 2 hours a week on your specific business. And then further to that, there's little accountability in terms of the marketing side if targets aren't met. I know you work in sales. If you're not meeting quota, it's fairly cutthroat, right? But on the marketing side, it doesn't tend to be like that. Um, there is a lot of excuses that get thrown up, and it's like, oh, maybe this content just didn't hit, or we need to tweak a few things, and we'll see how it works out for the next few months. But as a growing startup, you really need to be hitting some growth targets. And for us, we played out that strategy with the marketing agency for about 5-6 months, and then only recently, a couple of months ago, we've scaled that right back, and we're no longer using the agency. And finally, we come to the point where we are now, which is purely, well, not purely, but I would say 80% of our efforts are now focused on demand generation. So not sure how much you know about demand generation and demand capture, but demand generation represents like 95% of the market. So let's just say, for example, you take demand capture, that represents 3 to 5% of the buyers in the market, and they are actually in buy mode, whereas the rest of the market, the other 95%, aren't actually in buy mode. So what demand generation is you educating and creating awareness about your brand and the service that you offer. So when those customers do switch across to the demand capture side, and they go into buy mode, the first business or company they think of is you, and you don't have to spend as much money on Facebook ads and Google ads to convert them. So that's where we're at the moment, and there's a heavy focus there for us currently.
Yep. That's a very interesting story that you have just shared. And I'm sure that a lot of startup founders might be correlating with you when you were describing that story, because a lot of them might have gone through the same journey as yours. And as I told you, that I was also working for a startup for 3 years. And there was a time when I used to do marketing, sales, customer success all at the same time. And now
Yeah.
when I look at that time, I think that, that was a lot which I was doing. But I think that was a period when I learned a lot. I was still in my early 20s. So I thought that was a good investment of my time towards learning something new. Because I still feel that early 20s is the time when you can invest in learning. Um, and there is no better time than that, where you can actually understand what you are good at, what you are not good at, what you should be doing more often. And that's when I decided that probably tech sales and customer success is something which I want to do continuously, which kind of drives me and makes me happier than the other things. So that is something which I wanted to talk about before we move forward in this podcast. But now I want to understand from you your general experience as a startup co-founder, when you have been when you have founded something of your own versus when you didn't have something of your own. How different has been your life in terms of the way you earn money, or the way you look at the different things in the market? Because I know that when I talk to startup founders, there is a different vision that they have. There is a purpose with which they are working. Mostly if you talk to any other person, they also have a purpose, but I think the purpose is not as aligned or as impactful as you see from the startup founders, because they know that there is a baby that they are working on continuously. So I guess Pickup is your baby. How do you see it's creating an impact on the society as a whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, as someone who's trying to build a business, there's never going to be anyone who cares as much about the business as you. And I think that's probably one thing that a lot of managers fail at, is that they expect employees to care as much as they do. Leaders, founders, managers, anyone who has some sort of seniority within a business, they expect employees to care as much. But just through how people evolve and people's nature, they're never going to care if they've got no skin in the game, as much as you would as a founder, or someone who's putting 4 or 5 years into something and it potentially might not even work. So you're taking a big risk as a founder, both financially, in terms of time. There's career risk. There's a bunch of things that you're putting on the line. So especially at the early stage where you're, again, as I spoke about earlier, you're very limited in terms of resources because you've only got a small team. I mean, I'm hoping as we grow and we move into other states and we potentially raise some capital and all that sort of stuff, that the burden becomes a little bit less in terms of the time pressure. But who knows, it might get worse. So it can definitely be quite lonely. We do have a couple of other founders, but they're not in the business day to day. So you realize very quickly that, it can be quite lonely. You don't have anyone to turn to. The buck really does stop with you. So if things fail, it's typically because it's your fault, whether or not you were the one executing and that thing went wrong. You were the person who laid out the strategy for that person to execute that and then it to fail. So everything comes back to you. So it's definitely not as sexy as what everyone points it out to be. Being a founder or someone who's trying to build a business, there's a lot of lonely nights, long nights. I mean, I'm working 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. You don't see your partners as much as you would like. You don't see your family as much as you would like. But these are just some of the sacrifices that you make because you see the vision 3 or 4 years down the track. This could be something really amazing and really big that could change your life and change many people's lives, because once the business does get to a mature stage, you're hoping that you've got a fair few employees and you're helping change their lives and grow their lives too. So it's, once it gets to that stage, it becomes less and less about you and more about the other people.
Yep, that's so insightful again, Jacob, because I know a lot of startups, they struggle a lot, and they continue to sometimes build great products, but sometimes they leave it halfway. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to touch from you. You just talked about this thing that you will not be succeeding all the time. Yesterday, I had posted something on LinkedIn which said that it's always okay to fail, and you shouldn't always succeed. Even if you are failing, you should celebrate your failures. A lot of the time we are just celebrating our successes, but I think behind that one success there can be 100 failures that you have encountered. So I think before celebrating that one success, you should celebrate those 100 failures, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't get to the successes without the failures, right? I mean, I laid out before our entire marketing journey so far. There was a lot of failures in there. Eventually, we will get to a place where we nail exactly the way that our marketing should work, and we nail the right strategy, and from that will come a lot of success. But it's very, very rare where someone comes in and nails strategies from day one after the other. Like, I mean, there's probably no one really, like, even the best entrepreneurs in the world, like Elon Musk. I mean, they they failed time and time again until they got the whole Tesla thing right. So um, yeah, I think those failures do make you stronger. It's if you don't give up, if you can just keep pushing day after day, that's eventually you'll find success. I think it was who was it? Alex Hormozy. I'm not sure whether you listened to him or you've seen him across LinkedIn and Instagram. He's all over the place now anyway. He's a big business and marketing guy. But one thing that sort of really resonated with me that he said was, if you can stick at it over a long enough time horizon or time period, you will be successful. Like, the chances of you succeeding are extremely, extremely high. So you've just got to get in the reps and really just not quit.
That's totally true. I would also like to understand from you on this thing, which I've continued to ask in this special series of episodes for CEOs, founders, and co-founders. One question which has remained the same for everyone is that what do you value the most? Uh, I know you are at a different stage, so your answer can vary in this one. But what would you be valuing the more in terms of idea, strategy, and team? Um, Now, a lot of people have come up with this answer of team. Some of them have said, no, I think both, in fact, all three of them are key pillars of success. What about the startup mindset, Jacob?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question. You could probably ask 100 people and get 50 different types of answers. They're all super important. I think to start with, the product and the service is quite important. If you have a product or service that no one wants, it doesn't matter how good your team is or how good your strategy is, you're never going to make it. So you have to really have a market there for the product or service that you're selling. And then I think from there, then strategy becomes super important. And then I think a little bit later down the track, team is super important. But um, on the flip side of that, if you don't have a few key, really good executors in the early days, you will fail. And as we grow, bringing on quality performers and high performers is something that is really important for us. I think that can really make a company from the first few years that you're in business. So yeah, I know that's not a very succinct answer, but yeah, I think they're all equally important. It's tough to say, but I think going right back to the start, you have to have a product or service that people want, and if it doesn't matter how good your marketing is, how good your team is, how good your strategy is, if the product or service isn't wanted in the market, then you'll never succeed.
There is no right answer to that. No right answer, no wrong answer to that. It's all about how well you can justify what you are saying. And I think you were able to substantially justify. Um, but one of the other things, and this will be one of the last questions for today as well for you, is what was your biggest challenge as a startup founder, and how did you end up tackling that? So there are a lot of challenges that I think you have told us with regards to
Yeah.
marketing, as to other things. But was there a bigger challenge than marketing? I'm sure that sometimes raising capital, raising investment is one of the toughest part for uh, startup founders. Was it that, or was it something else for you, Jacob?
Oh, look, that you could probably ask me that question in 3 or 6 months' time, because we are potentially looking to raise capital in the near future. So we're putting together a pitch deck and all that sort of stuff at the moment. So yeah, maybe we have a follow up episode in a few months' time, and you can ask me that question. And I might say that's the most difficult thing we've done, but I still think it is around marketing. I think if we could wind back the clock, what we would do is literally have one product or service, one avatar, as in one ICP, and focus on one channel, and then scale that as much as we can, and then moved out in terms of going after more avatars and more channels. I think we've kind of gone in that direction now, where we've um, scaled the paid marketing right back, and we're focusing on our content strategy and demand generation across only two channels, which will be LinkedIn and TikTok. I mean, we still be posting some other stuff on the other channels, but that's not really our focus. So really having focus on one avatar and one channel, I think, would be something that we would have done, and was probably our biggest challenge, is that we tried to do too many things at once with a small team. And yeah, that we definitely came unstuck and learned the hard way.
Thank you so much, Jacob. That was another interesting answer that you have given us, and I'm sure that there were so many insights that we have gained out of this episode. So thank you so much for participating, and I hope that in the near future we are able to, once we have at least had around 20 episodes or 25 episodes in this special series of CEOs, founders, and co-founders. And if they are in Australia, I would love to organize one meetup where all those CEOs, founders, and co founders are invited under the same umbrella, and we can discuss about something in person and learn some new things. I'm sure that when different people with different ideas will come together under the same roof, that will be the most interesting thing that people like me who are young and who really want to learn new things would love to know and would love to listen to. But thank you so much, and I really expect you to be a part of another episode pretty soon once you have raised enough capital in the next 6 months.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Saurabh. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, that meetup sounds amazing. If you do end up organising that, I'd definitely be up for it.
Sure, man. Have a wonderful day, and I'll hope to see you soon in this episode.
You too. Thanks, Saurabh.